Rowan. Hey, hi. Welcome back to Show and Tell. I'm Billy, and it's a gorgeous day in my neighborhood. I'm coming to you from the ninth floor of my Manhattan apartment, and I really don't want to give the weather forecast, but you can see it's bright in here. This is all natural light. My ring light is not even connected today. So, today I have a guest. And as my subscribers will know, sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. It depends on how the wind is blowing. Sometimes my episodes share some personal information. Today is not one of those days, except for a little exception, and we'll talk about these later on. To those of you who have been with me for a while, you'll know that we often talk about vintage patterns, vintage knits, and sometimes things are modern interpretations that have a vintage flavor. Sometimes things are knit from authentic period patterns. In my last episode, you might recall that I talked about two books, one on Dutch ganzies and the other on Danish nightshirts. And while my guest today is from the Netherlands, I do not believe that ganzies are in her repertoire. She's going to show you some of the things that she's knit. And in a little while, we'll be back with her. But before I break away to greet her, let me just remind you that there are a couple of ways that you can support this channel. You'll find them below in the show notes. Also, if you're interested in seeing some additional photos that I post on Instagram, or if you're interested in seeing any of the sweaters that I have knit, you can find all of the details of all of my projects in Ravelry, and miraculously, billietoy will appear here. That's how you can find me in both places. Well, I do hope that you're able to enjoy your summer. I guess if you're in the Southern Hemisphere, it's winter, so hope you're enjoying that as well. As things start to get back to normal in many parts of the world, it's a new day. So now, without further ado, let's break away and meet my guest. Be right back. And I'm back. I'm going to let my guest introduce herself because the sequence of letters in her name are not easy for an American to pronounce. I apologize, but it's something like Antje. But please tell us your name and where you're from.
Hi, first, thank you for having me here. My name is Antje. I'm Dutch. I live in the northern part of the Netherlands in a city called Leeuwarden. It's the main city of our province called Friesland. If I would invite someone here and show not something touristy, I would take them for a walk and show them my favorite architecture. We have a lot of beautiful Art Nouveau buildings just outside the city center, and they are very fairy tale-like. And I don't think a lot of tourists will see them because they are not in the city center. So I would love to show them.
Oh, it sounds magical. I'm jealous that I'm not there right now. It sounds so beautiful. All right, so we got interrupted, but you're about to tell us if the buildings that you're describing have any influence on the embroidery work that you do.
Well, maybe not directly, but the Art Nouveau is very much known for their floral patterns, of course. So maybe more subconsciously they do inspire me, but I actually never translated something directly for my embroidery. But it's actually a very good idea. So I should explore that actually.
When I walk around New York, I often see Art Deco buildings, especially big office buildings. They sometimes have very ornate ornamentation in the entryways. And I'm sometimes snapping photographs thinking, well, maybe I could translate this into a knitting pattern. I haven't done it yet, but I think about it sometimes. Anyway, the sweater that's on the mannequin behind you seems to be indicative of the type of work that you do. The sweaters I've seen from your collection, which you're going to show us some, I have a feeling a lot of them have this embroidery on it, which none of my guests up until now have done. Now, this is Tyrolean style. It's an Austrian style as opposed to Dutch, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not the custom in your country for people to be wearing this. Why, what is it about this that excites you, that makes you want to do that?
Yeah, I really like floral patterns, and I love flowers in general. I also have a lot of dresses, not knitted, but also with floral patterns, and I like to add them to my knitting as well. And the Tyrolean style, yeah, they have so many designs with florals. So I fell in love straight away when I first discovered them years ago. So
I know you have a lot to show us, so I think that we should get started. Are there others besides the one behind you that are embroidered?
yes, I have a few of them.
Okay, I'd love to see them.
Yeah, okay. Let's start with the first one. It's actually the first sweater I ever knitted, so it was quite ambitious. I hope I can show it well. So it's a cardigan, and it's embroidered with flowers. And the waist is fitted by knitting small cables. So it has a very nice fitted design. The back also has some flowers embroidered on it. And the edges are crochet. So that was my first cardigan I ever knitted.
Brava. I personally love black and white, and I don't think that anyone has shown a black and white sweater of all the people I've interviewed. I love that one. It's so smart, we would say.
Yeah, thank you.
Black and white never goes out of style.
No, and it looks very clean, I guess, and the contrast with the knitting and the embroidery is very good. And it's still one of my favorite cardigans to wear. So after all those years, I'm still wearing it quite a lot.
It was very ambitious for a first attempt.
Yeah, I know. That's a little bit my kind of style of making things. I always just jump into it and see how it goes.
Good for you. It's an admirable quality.
Yeah, with each project, I try to incorporate something new, some new technique or something else I want to try. So it's always a challenge.
This is a theme I'm hearing from other people more and more, that, and myself included. Every time I try something, I want it to have a little new twist. Otherwise, it gets to be boring. If you're knitting for many, many, many years and you've knit many, many garments, how many times can you knit, you know, the same rectangle and attach it at the shoulders? So yeah, that's beautiful. Okay, exactly. What else?
Oh, what else do I have? I have another embroidered piece. It's not really a Tyrolean style, and it's not authentic vintage, but I still think it has a vintage vibe. It's a purple cardigan, and it's also embroidered, but with different techniques compared to the other.
See if you can hold it in front of the camera still so it has time to focus.
Ah, sure.
I guess that's as good as we're gonna get.
Yeah, the weather is a bit cloudy here, so I don't have the best light now in my apartment.
No,
This is
it looks pretty good. Oh, they're just, I mean, because it's something I myself have never tried, it looks incredible to me. Beautiful, thank you.
thank you. Yeah, maybe I can zoom in a little bit on this one, on the dress form, just for the embroidery.
That's great. Thanks. I was really trying to cajole Antje to demonstrate live with us how she does some of this embroidery, because I thought it'd be really interesting and maybe inspirational for other viewers. But it seems like the technology is a little bit hard, so I'm probably going to be able to insert a little video piece here of her actually doing it. But you could say now there are different types of flowers. I mean, are you creating these designs yourself? Or are you using patterns you're finding in old books? How does this happen?
Well, with the embroidery on this cardigan, on the dress form, I just used the pictures from the knitting pattern The original embroidery pattern wasn't available anymore. It's got lost many years ago, probably. So I just drafted it myself, but it was based on the picture of the cardigan. Sometimes I design my own, and I don't really use other embroidery designs for that, but I'm looking for pictures like a certain type of flower or something else. And from that, I draw my own design.
And are you using wool that you would knit with, or is it some other type of yarn or thread that you use?
Well, in this case, I use the same yarn. It's a merino wool.
Mhm.
I use it for the embroidery as well. It's just different colors. With the purple cardigan, this one,
Mhm.
I use embroidery floss. So you can use different types of yarn for that. And I read in some older vintage knitting patterns that the ladies back then used leftover yarn from other projects for their embroidery. So that's also an option.
The project I'm working on now is with a very, very fine yarn, super fine, like between cobweb and lace. So
Yes.
that would probably lend itself very much. I just don't know if I'm daring enough. Now, you're using a hoop, like an embroidery hoop, to spread it out?
Not always. It really depends. There are some pro and cons for using an embroidery hoop. It's easier to hold, of course. Like I have here a piece on an embroidery hoop, so it's easier to work with. But you have to be careful that you don't stretch your knitwear too much. Otherwise, it will pucker when you embroider. So
When I was a little girl, I did have some of those hoops. They were metal rings. I don't know if they were adjustable, if you could like ease it open a little if you had a thick fabric. I imagine that they must have something like that. It looks like yours is wooden, but I still would think that there could be like some little screw on the side that would
yes,
allow you to expand it.
yeah,
Ah,
yes, it's the
so
same with mine.
I
Yeah.
haven't looked at these in 55 years. or longer, maybe closer to 60 years since I last held an embroidery hoop in my hands. But anyway, yeah, the tools seem like they're interesting, and maybe the needle. Well, you'll show us when you do your little video.
Yeah, of course, but I must tell you that it was a lot of trial and error getting into embroidering knitwear, because the descriptions in the knitting patterns are like non-existent. Like with the vintage patterns, they just say like embroider the flowers and that's it, you know.
Right.
So,
I'm sure that they imagined that people knew how to do this. I mean, I have no idea. I have no idea how my mother knew how to make a French knot, where she took the needle and wrapped the thread around it a few times and then put it back through, and it made a little teeny like pom-pom. Or there were a few other stitches. My mother wasn't embroidering, but she knew how to do a couple of things, like a loop, and then you attach it at the end, so it kind of makes a flower petal. So as a child, I made a few different things, but it was my mommy who taught me, and she knew. So I would think the women who were knitting these sweaters back in the day, it had been passed down to them from their mothers and their grandmothers, no doubt.
yeah, exactly. But it's not like this anymore. So now it's your own journey, I guess.
Well, now with YouTube, I mean, YouTube should be called like Grandma Tube.
Yeah.
It's like everybody's grandma is out there for you to adopt.
Yeah, that's true. But even when I was looking for embroidery on knitwear on YouTube, the only thing I could find was like the lacy daisy stitch, and not much else. So what really helped me was buying an embroidery book. This one is about silk shading, a beginner's guide. I don't know if it's readable. And the techniques are very well explained. It's not for embroidering on knitwear, but the basic stitches are the same. So that was a really good starting point. And during the pandemic, I took some online embroidery workshops, and I learned a lot from those. So I was gathering like information from all different places and put it together to make my own embroidery better on the knitwear. So
I think it's very interesting, very,
yeah,
very special. And it really takes something plain and makes it into one of a kind, unique to you. You won't
yeah,
see too many other people wearing this.
yeah. It's true. It's you don't see it that often, and it really lifts up a piece. I must say, I really do like the embroidery on the knitting. But when I have finished the piece, I always start to knit something else without embroidery, because it's quite laborious work. So after one piece, I always need a break and then start something new again.
I did forget momentarily that I did have a guest on who did a Tyrolean sweater. She was knitting it for someone else.
Ah,
But it's not her usual thing that she does. Some of it was duplicate stitch, but I do believe some of it was also embroidered.
yeah.
So I think she does a little bit. Anyway, okay, I know you have some other things to show us.
Yeah, so like I said, I really like color work knitting in different techniques. I really like Fair Isle or stranded knitting. So I have a couple of pieces to show you. This is a Fair Isle cardigan. I will zoom in to show you the pattern.
The inside looks amazing too. Your floats look meticulous.
Oh, you want to see the inside? Yeah.
The inside looks like a machine.
This is the inside.
Just perfect. If I talk at the same time that you're showing it, you get my face. So that's why I've been sort of quiet.
Yeah.
There's different views, the speaker view and the gallery view. So I've learned from past experience to try and keep my mouth shut. Otherwise, you're seeing me and not your work. So,
Okay.
but the inside looks fabulous.
Yeah. I read somewhere that the flows shouldn't be too long. So I always have, how do you say that? Like every 2 or 3 stitches, I
you catch
connect the flow. Yeah. So that's why it looks so even, because I don't change the distance between the floats. It's always the same. So I cannot forget about it. It's just like a routine. Oh, what I forget to tell about the other one, it's made from an original 1940s pattern. And the next one I will show you, it's one of my own designs, because I really like to do that as well. So it's another cardigan. And this is the pattern.
And what type of wool are you using?
it's I'm not always using the same type of wool.
But is it worsted weight? It's is it merino? Do you know? I mean, is it something that will not exactly felt, but often in Fair Isle the colors start to merge into one another over time?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Well, this one is made from alpaca wool.
Alpaca, okay.
Yes, but I have also used wool, which is also used for traditional Fair Isle. I think it's a bit, how do you say that, stickier or?
Yes, that's what I was
Yeah,
trying to get at. Yes.
yeah. So it really depends on my budget and what's available, because we don't have a lot of options here, sadly. So
Recently, I've heard several different people say, oh, for Fair Isle, never use alpaca because it's not so sticky, I guess. And there's more spaces between between the stitches. And I went on Ravelry forum for
yeah.
stranded knitting, and I got comments back that a lot of people were saying, oh, that's ridiculous. You can use anything, just swatch and see how it looks. So case in point, you actually did use alpaca and you seem really happy with it.
Yeah,
Looks
yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah, it works fine for me. And yeah, I think I shouldn't try any synthetic wool.
Oh,
Cannot
no.
be cool as wool, but
Did you speak? Did you cut up the front?
no.
Make it a cardigan?
No, I didn't. I know it's a traditional technique, but I used for the knitting the description of one of my other vintage Fair Isle patterns. I think the 40 style Fair Isle patterns aren't using really the traditional techniques that much.
So it was knit in pieces?
Yes.
2 separate front pieces?
Yes.
And you were knitting across the front and purling back with all the floats?
Yes.
No problem.
No problem.
Good to know.
Yeah.
People watching will be encouraged to maybe try that, because today everybody talks about, oh, no, you can't, you don't want to be purling back with the floats.
Oh, I don't have any problem with it, but I must tell you, I'm a flat knitter. I rarely use circular needles, because that's the way how I learned to knit. And with the vintage knitting patterns, they also don't knit in the round. So that's the way how I.
Sometimes they do. I mean, sometimes they do. One of my episodes, I showed a painting. It's not in a museum in New York. It's somewhere, I think maybe in Germany, from the Middle Ages. In the painting, a person is using double pointed needles. I mean, way back.
Yeah, of course. Yes,
to knit a neckline or a sleeve, that was the way before there were round needles.
Yeah, probably, but I mean with like the 40s knitting patterns, at least the ones I have been knitting over the years, they were always knitted flat. Also the Fair Isle ones. So maybe in different periods they used the circular knitting, but in my experience, I haven't seen it in the vintage knitting patterns so far. But maybe I'm just missing out on those. I don't know.
I can't say definitively because I haven't looked at enough. Most of the vintage things I've knit, and I don't have a big repertoire yet, they have been flat. They have been
exactly.
that get assembled. But the top that I'm just beginning for my next knit along is Fair Isle, and it is knit in the round. It's an adaptation of an original pattern. So I don't know if the original would have been knit flat. Perhaps.
It's an interesting question, actually.
Yeah, before there were round needles, I think more things were certainly knit flat. When I learned to knit, I think round needles may have existed, but they certainly were not common. My
No,
mother-in-law
exactly.
has hundreds of knitting needles, none of them around.
No.
Oh, by the way, I wanted to mention these. I don't know if you noticed these. Can you see? Let me go closer.
Are those clogs?
They are. They are.
Oh, that's so cute.
I bought these when I visited Amsterdam, and
Oh.
I think I bought them in Delft. They used to have the little blue and white Delft, like porcelain enameled onto it. They were really sweet, but over the years that all flaked off.
Oh,
I
too
dug
bad.
them out to wear just for you.
Thank you. They still look good, actually.
They're so sweet. Anyway,
Yeah.
sorry. Keep going. I know that there's some dresses and some crochet things, which typically we don't get into crochet, but I have a feeling that they're very special, so we should see them.
Okay, I will get to crochet. I actually don't crochet a lot, but there was a time I was commuting a lot with the train. So I thought bringing crochet in the train is easier than the needles, at least if you're not knitting circular. So in those times I made 2 dresses, and I hope I can show them properly. This is the first one. Oh, it's very hard to show. The back has a little bow, and the back is quite deep. And it's made from a 1930s crochet pattern.
I've seen that on your Instagram page.
Yeah.
Tell us your Instagram page and I'll put it on the screen and I'll put it in the show notes so people can go and have a look at that. When it's on you, it looks like a dream. It's really gorgeous when it's on.
It's a very nice design. The stitches are quite easy, but sometimes it's just good to have something easy going on, an easier project.
And quick. I imagine that goes very quickly.
Yeah. It's still a dress, so it's a bigger piece, of course, but it goes pretty quickly. Yeah. The other dress I crocheted, it's a 2-piece dress, so maybe that's easier to show. This is the top. Let's zoom in a little bit so you can see the pattern. It has a wide neck. I think it's called like a boat neck.
Boat neck.
Yeah. So it's very comfy to wear. And there is a matching skirt. It has the same pattern on the lower part of the skirt. And then it's just normal crochet stitches. I think it's a double crochet. And it has a band in the waistline, so you can adjust it to your size.
Well, that looks like a real labor of love. I have seen people knit 2-piece sets or a dress. Seems like an awful big time commitment, and that yarn looks like it was a little thinner than the one on the pink dress, so probably took quite a bit of time.
The yarn of the pink dress is thinner, actually.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. But slightly, I guess. I think I crocheted the pink one on 2.5 millimeters, and the green one was on 3. millimeters crochet hook. So
wow.
yeah.
I'm not ready to go there.
No.
I'm happy knitting sweaters and maybe
Yeah.
jackets.
I prefer knitting, and I really like to make cardigans. I think I make most of my pieces are cardigans, so I like to wear them over my dresses. Yeah, you can choose if you button up or you keep it loose or open. So yeah, that are my favorite things to knit. I have more to show you.
Okay.
This is a modern piece. It's a Rowan pattern, and it has Fair Isle, and it has intarsia. It's a very complicated pattern. So this is the cardigan, and I will zoom in again. Can you see the Fair Isle pattern?
If I speak, the picture is not going to be of that, so I'm going to be quiet for a moment longer.
The Fair Isle is like two very similar shades, so it's very hard to see when it's knitted. This is the intarsia.
It's particularly lovely to have the flowers and that somewhat geometric pattern juxtaposed. And as you mentioned, the two colors are very similar, so it's very subtle, but it's noticeable. I think it's very, very pretty, very pretty.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a very hard one to knit. I think it's one of my most challenging projects because the shades of the Fair Isle are so similar. You really have to count everything out, otherwise you won't see the difference that well. So it took a lot of time to knit it up, but yeah, I'm very happy with this piece. It has all the things I like. It has the flowers, it has the color work, and it has the stranded knitting. So
also the clarity of your camera has it blurred a little bit, so it actually looks like it's perfect, which it might be. It looks like it was made by a machine. That's how perfect it looks on your camera, but only you are seeing it in person, so only you know if it's really that perfect, but it certainly looks it.
Yeah, well, it's not. It's definitely not perfect, but I also think when something is handmade, of course, it has to look good. But I think it's also good to see it handcrafted, especially with the embroidery. When you see something which is embroidered with a machine, it's way too perfect. And how do you say that? When it's when something is hand embroidered, it's more vivid, or how do you say that? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, it just makes it more special to know that it's made by hand. So it has the hand of a person in it as opposed to a machine.
Yes, exactly. Maybe it's like a signature.
A lot of Japanese potters, when they're throwing a pot, often they put in a little imperfection, or they put a thumbprint in it so that there's no mistaking that this was made by hand. And I've heard that some knitters some people put like a little red stitch maybe at the hem in every garment they make. That's like their little signature. So it's not an imperfection, it's an additional little hors d'oeuvre that's put there so that you know this was made by that person. So yeah, I mean, anything that's made by hand is so charming, so quaint, and
yeah, certainly. Yeah, I think the carpet weavers, they always make a deliberate mistake.
Yeah.
Also to make visible that it's handmade.
Handmade.
Yeah. And last week I was at a museum here in Leeuwarden. We have a great exhibition about embroidery. And most pieces were hand embroidered. It was amazing. But there were also a few pieces that were machine embroidered. And it looks different. It looks perfect.
Yeah, it's too perfect.
Yeah.
Every stitch is exactly the same size.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also with one of the online embroidery workshops I participated in a few months ago. The teacher also said, because I was a little insecure about my own work, like it's not perfect enough and stuff like that. But the teacher told us, like, no, when something is hand embroidered, it needs to have a certain nonchalance. It has to look good, but still a little relaxed. I don't know how to explain it, but
I would think the main thing is to not have it be bunched up, puckering, but to have it be smooth. If it's puckered, then it probably looks unattractive. And on a machine, you're not going to get that. But if you're doing it by hand, I would still think you want that quality, that level of, I'm searching for the right word, just that caliber of technique, so that it looks really good, and yet it's not made by a machine.
Exactly. Yeah, if you find that balance, then you're a very good crafter, I guess.
Well, I would be remiss not to mention Jessica, who was one of my early guests.
Yeah.
Fantastic knitter. She's now doing embroidery. I believe she's making a peasant blouse. It's not something that's knitwear, but she's embroidering on fabric. We'll see. I mean, maybe now that she has the experience of doing something on fabric, maybe she'll want to embroider on her knits. I don't know. And maybe she'll be watching this and maybe she'll tell us if that's in her plans. But she's a beautiful vintage knitter. Oh, I've had so many lovely guests, and I'm glad to welcome you into the fold.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
For having me.
Do you have anything else that you want to show us?
Yes.
More?
I also made a hooded scarf a few years ago. So it's like, I don't know if you know those pixie caps. Like, maybe I should just put it on so you can see it.
No, I know what you mean.
Yeah. So this one, normally you have a pixie cap like this, but this one is like a scarf. So you can wear it like this.
It's great. And if you have a light colored coat, like a gray coat, it would make it look like it was part of the coat.
Yeah, I think those caps are very cute, and this one is even better because it's also around your neck, so it's very cozy.
Good coverage, yes.
Yeah, and the initial knitting pattern I used was just very plain, so I designed this intarsia pattern. So it's with roses to spice it up a little and make it more special. And I also added the edge, the crochet edge. It wasn't part of the original pattern.
It looks very, very meticulous. You have a lot of patience to get it right.
I like to challenge myself and do bigger projects. So I'm not a very fast knitter. So my collection of knitwear isn't that big actually, because it takes quite a lot of time to make all those pieces, and I have to make a lot of swatches, and with designing you have to try new things, and things work out differently than you first thought, and so it always takes a lot of time.
But I think this is a very European theme. I remember visiting a cousin of mine in Paris, and she
Yeah.
showed me her armoire with her clothing in it. It was a very small clothing rod. Maybe it was 2 feet wide. And that was everything that she had that would go on a hanger. Not sweaters, not scarves, but for hanging, very little. Now,
Yeah.
an American closet, sometimes closets are 10 feet long, 5 feet wide. You can walk in. You might even have a chair inside if you have a large home. But she was in a small Paris apartment and said to me, but Billy, you must understand, this is our way to have a few very elegant things that are very well made, that will last a long time, that are classic. And then we take a scarf or we take a brooch and we accessorize it. So every time we wear it, it's looking like something different. But I guess what we would say in America is less is more. That's an expression. So
Yeah.
she was able to make do just fine with a very small, beautiful wardrobe. And I suspect that that's just more of a European thing. In America, it's all about, people, a favorite hobby of many people is going to the shopping mall and shopping.
Yeah.
There are people who go shopping every day and just consume, consume, consume. It's a real throwaway culture here. You wear the latest fashion, and then when it's out of style next year, throw it away. We really have to do more of what you're doing, have fewer things. I'm heading in that direction myself. I mean, I've always been somewhat of a minimalist. I don't have a huge wardrobe. I don't have a huge closet. And I do try and keep it as lean and mean as I can. But if you knit a sweater like this that you can knit in less than a week, it's too easy to make too many. So more and more, I'm trying to challenge myself to do things on finer needles, finer yarn, so that they'll take more time, so that I'll have less output.
Yeah.
My goal is to knit fewer garments, but more intricate things so that they won't take up as much space. And also you can save on yarn. I mean, the cost of the yarn. So it's a good strategy. I'm happy with the strategy. And I
maybe you should maybe you should try embroidering on knitwear too.
I will. I definitely will. I saw an American woman have a sweater on. It was very plain cardigan, solid color. I don't even think there was a pattern or a texture. It was just plain stockinette. And then she had a few little flowers and maybe like a little bird, and it continued around on the back. And I thought it was just a little touch. It was not a symmetrical thing. It wasn't the same on the left and the right. It was just, one side. And I thought just a little something like that could be very, very lovely. So it's in the back of my mind. Yes.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not in my queue yet, but I'm gonna maybe think about it a little more.
Yeah.
All right, this seems like a good place to wrap up. Yeah. I have to go get my first vaccine shot. I have an appointment finally after waiting months. It was very nice to meet you, and thank you for spending so much time with me. It's really been a delight to see your work.
Yeah, thank you. I really liked our conversation. I hope I made a little sense.
Oh no, I mean, everyone who comes on my show who's not a native English speaker is worried that they're not going to be effective at communicating. But you see, it's not that hard. We all speak the same language. Knit one, grow one.
Yeah.
In a different language. I'm sort of interested. Are you knitting from Dutch patterns?
Yes, I do. Also English one.
But the Dutch patterns, are they using something else for knit? Do they have a different symbol than K?
Yes. We say for knitting breien.
So in a pattern, when you're reading it, is that word spelled out, or do they abbreviate it to just the first letters?
Like a knit, we call it recht, like straight. It's a straight stitch.
Ah,
And with the purl, we say it's averechts. So it's like how do you say that? It's like a contradiction.
but do they use an abbreviation in a pattern?
Yeah.
Like we do
Yeah.
K1, P1?
Yeah, so we say 1B AV is the purl. So
Okay, so similar.
so 1B, 1AV.
Language isn't exactly the same, but the methodology is similar. I know that there's different styles of knitting, and there's Western and Eastern and all of that, but pretty much it's universal. Universal language. But you've done just splendidly with your English, as I knew you would. I had every.
Oh, yeah, it's been a while that I've been talking in English, so it's a little bit rusty. So yeah, I hope everybody could follow me with what I was saying.
Well, I will have subtitles at the bottom that people can click on the little gear up. So they'll be able to read my interpretations of what you said, and they'll see things spelled out. But also people, you can find the translation into many, many other languages if you go to the bottom of your screen and click on the gear. So if you have people in your country who don't speak English, who want to watch this, they can hear it in their own language, or not hear it, they can read it in their own language.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. I will let them know. Maybe my grandmother.
All right. Thank you again.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.